So my buddy Eddie and I made this beat, and we thought it'd be pretty cool to do a breakdown of how we made it. So we started with this Japanese sample that we found from digging on YouTube. I liked the drum portion in the beginning that plays with the snare drum. So I took that and then I looped it a bunch and then I turned it into this drum loop. And it's heavily EQ'd with some kickstart on it. So it gives it like a pumping effect and then automated erosion. The next thing that I think I decided to do was add some effects for the perks and the drums. I added this weird vocal chop thing, and this has nothing else on it. This effect is also taken from the loop. I EQ'd it and added some reverb to it. And then I crafted the drums by getting this kick, and then added the snare. So a pretty bright snare, and then I added the hats. And then I added this panning snare fill after every couple of bars. And then I added this clap with heavy reverb just to make it a little bit more interesting. And so with the sample and all the other effects, it kind of sounds like this. For the chords, I decided to go with this progression. And this is from this free plugin called Dixon DB1. I believe it's the jazz organ preset on here. I added reverb, EQ, put a lot of auto pan on it, sidechained it to the kick, and put some stereo width on it. Then I layered this with some chords from Serum. Some EQ, sidechained the chords to the kick so that it would duck whenever the kick hit, and then made it a bit wider using utility. I wanted it to have like a pumping effect, so I used, I think I put LFO on the cutoff with some resonance, and then I used these waves or oscillators, and that sounds like this. Then Eddie decided to resample that chord progression and mess with the warp settings, which ended up sounding like this. For the bass, I think I just used simpler, put a bass in, added some saturator, some sidechain to the kick, and some more EQ, and that sounds like this. For later portions of the song, I added this bell counter melody, and this is from Omnisphere. It's got some EQ on it and delay, and then I lowered the bitrate using Redux. This is another section in the track, and for this part I used this Whirly Soft Piano preset on Ableton, messed with the stereo, added reverb and some EQ, and I think I messed with the pitch in the beginning as well. In the envelope, I messed with the pitch so that in the beginning of the chord, it sounds like it's pitch bent up. And in the context of the rest of the song, it sounds like this. And I decided to add this choir breakdown section so that there was some variation in the beat. I also added this string section, and for this I used BBC Symphony Orchestra, which is a free plugin from Spitfire. And that's pretty much the whole beat. So with all the elements that I talked about earlier, it sounds like this. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the portion that I made. Once I finished this up, I saved the stems, sent those to Eddie, and Eddie made some changes to the beat, and he also mixed the whole project as well. So he will now talk about his creative process behind finishing the beat. So I'll pass the mic off to Eddie.
Okay, so once Dean sent me the stems, I added an SSQ to the main synth, and it added a bit of high end. To make the interlude, I took the E piano stems from later on in the beat and chopped it up. So here you see a bunch of little chops, cuts, warps, all that good stuff, and it's in halftime, so it's a bit slower, and it gives it a different feel for this section of the beat. This right here is a cute little snare I added, just another layer. And these two EQs on the snare tail and the main snare just make them fit a bit more nicely into the overall drum mix. I added a top layer of the kick, a bit of saturation, so you cut off around 300 or hertz. You don't hear the low end, and then you combine it with this low end kick, which I added the rare plugin from Analog Obsession. So with the plugins enabled, the kick becomes a bit more punchy, has a faster attack, less sustain, and a bit more bass around 60 hertz. I added this second serum preset for the bass. It has +7 semitones on the second oscillator, so it gives it a nice harmony. And there's an LFO that's 16 bars long. It's affecting the cutoff filter, the drive, the FM from noise, and a bunch of other parameters. The auto pan on the bass is automated between different rates, so it switches from 8th notes to 16ths to 30 seconds, and the amount gradually increases as the beat goes on. So if you want this effect, you have to change the phase to 360 degrees instead of the default 180 in order to cancel out the panning and get the tremolo effect. up next, I'm gonna be ABing the export Dean sent me from his session of the beat, and comparing it to the mix I did. So you might notice my mix is a bit less mid focused. That's because I wanted to make space for an artist when we eventually record someone on this beat.
Tejus.